Hello, welcome back. I did finish upload the last part of the Pentium and I did find few more PDF, but I should not find much more because I already have too much. This is 30 degrees, so my living room is very hot again. So let's put the light off. I did find few more PDF. The Intel graphic technology, hyper threading and CPU catcher. But let's not take too much because then I like to go to read about the Pentium, but now I'm getting more and more there. So I will not try to add much more. It's 4:20 p.m. So the sun will start to go down soon, so that's very good. So let's just continue. I need a minute to do myself ready. So, but that's I actually like to read all this and not just do this to record and to my YouTube channel. I do it because I like to learn about it. And this Wikipedia, that's super good. There's so much high-level information. That's Wikipedia is just super perfect. So that's like unlimited of information there from all kinds of experts writing. So that's super good. So I will use Wikipedia for always, forever, the rest of my life.
Pentium OverDrive. The Pentium OverDrive was a microprocessor marketing brand name used by Intel to cover a variety of consumer upgrade products sold in the mid-1990s. It was originally released for 486 motherboards, and later some Pentium sockets. Intel dropped the brand, as it failed to appeal to corporate buyers, and discouraged new system sales. Contents: 486 sockets, compatibility and performance. Models: Pentium sockets. Socket 8. See also. References. External links. 486 sockets. Pentium OverDrive for 486 systems. The Pentium OverDrive is a heavily modified 3.3-volt Pentium P54 core manufactured on 0.6 micrometer technology. It is fitted with a 486 compatible bus unit, though with an increased pin count, an integrated heatsink and fan, and 32 kb of level 1 cache, double the 16 kb offered on regular P54C chips. 1. As the data bus was effectively reduced to 32-bit width, per clock performance was much lower than that of a regular Pentium, though still substantially faster compared to a similarly clocked 486 owing to Pentium's architectural improvements, such as the much improved FPU. It was also equipped with an integrated 3.3-volt power regulator, as many 486 motherboards only provided 5-volt power. The 63 MHz model was launched in February 1995 and supported 25 MHz bus systems. The much faster 83 MHz version, which supported both 25, 63 MHz effective and 33 MHz bus systems, launched much later the same year on September, and was very expensive at $299 compared to other upgrade alternatives such as those based on AMD's 5x86 and Cyrix's CX5x86 chips. 2. The processor's heatsink is permanently attached, and the removable fan module is powered via spring-like metal prongs that connect to a trio of conductors on the surface of the chip. The clip that releases the fan is visible in the first photo, at the top left corner of the CPU. The central plastic column that leads from the center of the fan houses the fan wiring and leads down the side of the heatsink at this corner. The small plastic points at each top left of this column are the locking mechanism for the fan and are released by squeezing them. The opposite corner of the CPU has a latch that locks the fan around underneath the die shot of Pentium OverDrive 4486 system sheetsink, by swinging into place upon assembly. The processor monitors the fan and will throttle back on clock speed to prevent overheating and damage if the fan is not operating. This is a predecessor to the internal temperature detection and protection in Intel's modern processors. Compatibility and performance. During development, Intel had changed the design specification, causing various compatibility and performance problems with some boards that were previously fully compatible. For instance, the Packard Bell 450 motherboard required a specially designed interposer to be installed between the processor and the motherboard to cope with the changed specification, with few unfortunate consequence of precluding access to the motherboard's level 2 cache, resulting in subpar performance. 3. In addition, some older chipsets do not support the write-back functionality of the chip's level 1 cache, which could also reduce performance. However, the majority of socket 3 motherboards, particularly later, post 1994 VLB and most PCI boards, provide proper support for the Pentium OverDrive, including fully operational access to the level 2 cache, and many earlier boards also support the processor with varying levels of compatibility and performance. Performance-wise, many popular synthetic benchmarks of the time showed the Pentium OverDrive underperforming its much cheaper and higher clocked rivals, though its real-world performance, given the motherboard cache was being optimally used, could be much different. Programs that were floating point pendant or optimized for the Pentium architecture, as were both becoming increasingly common in the mid to late 90s, derived a more substantial benefit from the Pentium OverDrive, particularly the 83 MHz version. In addition, it fully supported programs and operating systems specifically coded for the Pentium architecture, such as many emulators, multimedia utilities and even later Windows operating systems and games. However, the benefit of running such programs on a clock and motherboard bus constrained system may be questionable. Models. POD 5 V63 introduced the 3rd of February 1995. 235 pins, P24T pinute. 5 or 3.3 volts. L1 cache 32 KB, 16 KB plus 16 KB. 63 MHz on 25 MHz front side bus, 25 2.5. POD 5 V83 introduced September 1995. 237 pins, P24T pinute. 5 or 3.3 volts. L1 cache 32 KB, 16 KB plus 16 KB. 83 MHz on 33 MHz front side bus, 33 2.5. Some 63 CPU models, part number 109X4405H6J05, have 234 pins instead of 235. Some CPUs come with the pin chopped off, pin of 4, and others had the pin completely missing and covered with the encapsulation. Pentium sockets. Pentium OverDrive 4 socket 4 without fan. Pentium OverDrive 4 socket 4, 120/133 MHz. Pentium OverDrive MMX without fan. Pentium OverDrive MMX 166 MHz. The original socket 4 Pentium chips ran at higher voltages, 5V, than later models. Although little known, Intel did in fact release an overdrive chip for these sockets, that used an internal clock multiplier of 2, to change them to a 120/133 machine. POD 5 V120, 120 MHz on 60 ms bus. Pod 5V133, 133 MHz on 66 ms bus or 120 MHz on 60 MHz bus. The OverDrive processors for the Pentium 7590 and 100 were also released. Socket 5, 3.3V, running at 125, 150 and 166 MHz, clock multiplier of 2.5. The 125 is an oddity because Intel never made a Pentium 125 as a standalone processor. Pod 3V125, 125 MHz on 50 ms bus. Pod 3V150, 150 MHz on 60 ms bus. Pod 3V166, 166 MHz on 66 ms bus. These were replaced by Pentium OverDrive MMX, which also upgraded the Pentium 120 to 200 MHz to the faster version with MMX technology. Pod 66x200, up to 200 MHz on 66 MHz bus, clock multiplier of 3.0. Pod 66x166. Up to 166 MHz on 66 MHz bus, clock multiplier of 2.5. Pod 60x180, up to 180 MHz on 60 MHz bus, clock multiplier of 3.0. Pod 60x150, up to 150 MHz on 60 MHz bus, clock multiplier of 2.5. Socket 8. In 1998 the Pentium 2 OverDrive, part number Pod 66x333, was released as an upgrade path for Pentium Pro owners. This upgrade could be used in single and dual processor Socket 8 systems, or in two sockets of quad processor Socket 8 systems with CPU 3 and 4 removed. Although it could be run in quad and hexa socket systems unofficially after some users upgraded the ALR6X6 with them. 4. Pentium 2 OverDrive without heatsink. Flip-chip disk shoots core ISON left. 512 KB cache ISON right. Combining the Pentium 2 disk shoots core in a flip-chip package with a 512 KB full-speed L2 cache chip from the Pentium 2 Xeon into a Socket 8 compatible module resulted in a 300 or 333 MHz processor that could run on a 60 or 66 MHz front-side bus. This combination brought together some of the more attractive aspects of the Pentium 2 and the Pentium 2 Xeon. MMX support /improved 16-bit performance and full-speed L2 cache, respectively. The later Dixon Mobile Pentium 2 core would emulate this combination with its 256 KB of full-speed cache. In Intel's family /model /stepping scheme, the Pentium 2 OverDrive CPU is Family 6, Model 3. Though it was based on the disk shoots core, when queried by the Cluid command, it identified as a Klamath Pentium 2.5, as noted in Pentium 2 processor update documentation from Intel. Although this processor has a Cluid of 163XH, it uses a Pentium 2 processor Cluid 065XH processor core. 6. An engineering sample version of the Pentium II OverDrive CPU, showing the bottom of the unit. The major customer for the production of these chips was Sandia National Laboratories' ASI-RED supercomputer, which had all 4,510 CPUs upgraded in 1999. After the upgrade, the system was once again the world's fastest on the top 500. See also Intel 80486 OverDrive. Rapid CAD. References. 1. Intel announces first Pentium, TM, OverDrive, TM, processor, press release, Google Groups, February, 1995. 2. Crothers, Brooke, the 11th of September, 1995. System upgrades. Intel plans OverDrive for Pentium systems. Infoworld.volume.
Yes, we not read this, sorry. That was last edit. So that's one part video. Good.